Hi everyone, I'm Michael, your Yardy or Dr. Mike, and welcome to Technique Talk, the MYK system, and more. This is episode 34 in our series, and today we're going to talk about and more. And that and more is specific goals. Hey, if you haven't subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I have a lot more videos coming. So if there's something that you're aiming for in your life, this series is what you need. Let's dive in. The universe reveals its deepest secrets to those who persevere to discover them. All right, so let's start our story today. Back in the late 1900s. Wow, we're going back. So 1994, to be exact, I was getting ready to graduate from chiropractic college. And someone told me that I should read the book, Think and Grow Rich. So I went and got the book, and I read it. And I got to say, I hated it. I was graduating from school, and all I had in my mind was that I wanted to help people. And I didn't get into the profession just to make money. And it was, the book was all about making money. And I was all about getting people better. And it seemed to me that this entire book, all it did was focus on money. And so I was not into the book at all. So I moved away, right? I graduated. I moved away from school. And like a typical guy, about a year went by. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to clean my room. So I was cleaning things up and I was moving stuff around. And I opened a drawer and there was the book, Think and Grow Rich. And I thought, this person said I should read the book. And so let me give it another try. Let me just, I'm a year out of school now. Let me see. So I did. This time, I was reading the book, and I was going along, and it said in there that the book is going to talk about money because everyone can relate to money. But the book is really about how to accomplish any goal that you want in life. And I thought, I don't recall seeing that the first time. And shortly after this information, there was another sentence that I had never seen. And it said, to really get the most out of this material, you need to read this book a minimum of 3 times. And I said, wow, I didn't see that the first time either. So I decided, all right, I'm going to give it a try. Let me read this book 3 times. And so over the next 30 days, that's what I did. I just read the book. That's all I did for the next 30. I'm a slow reader. That's all I did. Read the book. And once I did that, I couldn't put the book down. Each time I went through it, I found new information, more information. And I finally went out and I bought the audio version. And this was on cassette tape. So that was big time back then. So every time, so what I did is I put it in the car, and every time I started in my car and I drove anywhere, that was playing. And, now with cassette tape, you'd have to take one out and then put the other one in. And so there was a little bit of, going through the cassette tape. Sometimes I'd listen to the same one over and over and over again. But basically, all I did was I was listening to this material whenever I was in the car, and then I was reading the material whenever I wasn't doing something else with work or whatever. And I was totally immersed in this information. And after a number of months, I felt like, okay, I'm going to give this information a try. I'm going to see, here's the principles. It laid out this stuff. Here's what you need to do. And so in it, he said, to prove to yourself that this works, set a high goal, something that is out of reach right now, so that when you accomplish the goal, basically you're going to buy into the system. And I put down at the time that I wanted to double my income in 1 year. So it actually took 13 months, and I had doubled my income, and I was completely sold on the information because I worked the plan, I worked the system, like it said to, and I did it. And so I went out and I started grabbing all the self-help books that I could find just to see what tidbits I could grab from other people. And I noticed that almost every single one of them had the same basic protocols. And I realized that there's actually a technique to success. And a lot of the books would focus on one or two of the things that you needed to do to get good at, to succeed. And they weren't always the same one or two things, but almost all of them were included in Napoleon Hill's work. And Napoleon Hill wrote his stuff way back 1930s is when he got his first Think and Grow Rich published. But it's not rocket science on how to attain any goal that you want in life. And any goal that you have gone after and accomplished, you've used these principles. And so what we want to do with this is we want to bring these principles into the front of your brain and have you acknowledge them and see which ones that you're already good at and then which ones that you really need to work on. But you kind of need all of these principles to accomplish a goal. And that's why sometimes you can go out and you accomplish a goal where you're using more of these principles, maybe without even knowing it. And then other times when you don't accomplish a goal, it's because you're not using enough of these principles. And so it's really simple. I mean, it really is. So from a work standpoint, I sat down over 30 years ago and I said, this is how much I would like to work. This is how much money I would like to make. I think this avenue is going to be the best avenue from a work standpoint to get me there. And so I set out on that path. And let me tell you, it did not happen overnight. And so, the one thing about this is we always hear these stories of people saying, oh, do this and you'll be successful. And people think, oh, I'll just go do this and tomorrow I'll be successful. That's not how it works. Let me give you a little bit about what happened to me. So I wanted to get up in front of people and teach. The problem was I didn't know how to teach. And I was not a good public speaker, and my mind would go blank if I had to get up in front of people. And every time I would teach, I would tell myself, okay, I'm learning how to do this. And when I would have a bad class, I'd say, okay, there's another way that I've learned of how not to do this. And so I just kept persevering, I guess, through that. So I had to learn how to make instant rapport with people, how to teach anatomy and not make it boring, and how to structure the class so that people wouldn't fall asleep. And this took years. So I lost money each and every time that I went out to teach a class when I first started. And this went on not for months, not for classes, but for years. I actually had other people who would question me and say, why are you still doing this? Why are you still trying to make this work? And to be honest, I felt like it was my mission in life. And so I would say, well, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. And one day it's going to pay off. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I lost money for the first 7 years that I went out to teach. And then the next 7 years, I basically broke even. So I did this. I went out and taught and did this for about 14 years, and I was still behind the 8 ball. I was still losing money from that standpoint because I broke even, but I had lost money, and I haven't recouped that money yet. But in the 15th year, everything kind of turned around for me. Now, the universe does not give up her prized possession very easily, and I don't recommend sticking with something for as long as I did. And as a matter of fact, if you ever watch Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, he says all the time, if you lose money for more than 3 years, it's a hobby, it's not a job. Now, I never have agreed with that because that hasn't been my experience. I stuck with it. But I also, during that time frame, I was learning how to do the job. So it took me a while. I'm a slow learner. It took me a while. All right, so let me go back. We're gonna get back to me. So in 2015, so this was 21 years after I first bought the book and read the book Think and Grow Rich, I saw where you could become a certified instructor in Napoleon Hill's work. And I was using his information for the past 20 years, and I just thought it'd be a fun thing to do. So I started the process. It was like 2013, I think, when I started the process, and it took a couple years. I finally attained that. I became a certified instructor of his material in 2015. Now, the only downside to Nap's work, I call him Nap, Napoleon, right? So Nap's work. The only downside is it's old. And it's kind of hard to relate to. The information, as far as the principles and the steps and that kind of stuff, is good, but you gotta weed yourself through. He's a very flowery writer, but you gotta weed yourself through that part of it. But then you gotta weed yourself through the stories that he tells, because he tells stories about famous people in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And for anyone of any age, really, in today's world, to read a book about how to be successful in life, and they're talking about what a great invention the telegraph was, and how it changed the country, it's kind of like, what? How do you relate to that? We don't even use that anymore, but boy, what a great invention that was. And so basically I went out, I wanted to take the principles from all the Naps of the world, if you will, all the Napoleons of the world. And so I looked at Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Jim Rohn, Dale Carnegie, Mel Robbins, David Goggins, Simon Sinek, Jim Collins, Brene Brown, Stephen Covey, John Maxwell, Jordan Peterson. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. I could read off names for a long time as far as books that I've read, people that I've looked at, and things like that. So what I would like to do is talk about other techniques that compare and contrast with the myokinesthetic system, but also talk about techniques of not just success, but life in general. And so if we're gonna do that, that's what this portion is. So what's the starting point to make a change in your life? Where do we begin? And so you have to start with a specific goal. And that's different from a goal, because a goal can be like a wish, but a specific goal, now you're getting somewhere, because with a specific goal, you have to put a little thought into it. And this is the starting point, and it's also the biggest stumbling block that almost everybody has. And I've seen it a number of times in many books. You need to make SMART goals. SMART. So S is specific, M is measurable, A is achievable, R is relevant, and T is time-based. And they say a goal without a time limit is really just a wish. So let's talk about the specific part. So you hear people all the time. They'll say things like, I want to lose weight. I want to make more money. I would like a bigger house. I want to travel more. And not one of these is actually a goal, because none of these are specific. Okay, so let's take I want to lose weight, because almost everybody can relate to that statement. So how much weight do you want to lose, and in what time frame? So think this thought in your head, or if nobody's around, say it out loud. I want to lose weight. Just think that, or say that. I want to lose weight. There's not a real feeling that goes with that. Now try this. I want to lose 10 pounds in 4 weeks. Think that, or say that. I want to lose 10 pounds in 4 weeks. Now, I don't know about you, but I get a little bit of anxiety with that statement, because my mind immediately goes to, all right, how are we going to do that? So putting a specific amount and a time frame on it changes the statement from something that's out there into a tangible thing. And, do I think I can do this? Is this a crazy thing? 10 pounds in 4 weeks. That's not really crazy. Now, if I said I wanted to lose 50 pounds in 4 weeks, that's almost 2 pounds a day. That's not realistic. That is not a realistic statement. So the bigger the goal, sometimes the longer it's going to take. But if it's something that you want to accomplish, who cares how long it takes? This is your life, and it's something that you're building, and that goal is something that you want to do that's going to make you happy, and every day that you work towards that goal then becomes a good day. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. And I can attest to that. It took me 15 years. I can attest to that. It does not matter how long it takes. So set one specific goal for yourself today. A measurable goal with a time limit. Now, we're going to talk more about this, but this is a starting point. So if you want to make more money, how much more money and in what time frame? If you want a bigger house, how many bedrooms? How big of a yard? How many bathrooms? How much storage space? Get specific. Do you want to travel more? Where and when and for how long do you want to travel? You choose the area in your life that you want to set a goal in, make it specific, and put a time limit on it. I've done it for all these aspects. The more different aspects of your life that you set a goal for, the more things that you have to do in a day, and then life becomes non-boring because you got something to do all the time, and you're doing things, you're working towards things that you want. You're building the life that you want to live. All right, that's it for today. So, if you made it this far, smile.